Hey everybody, it is time once again for the monthly Rahdo Roundup, and man, we've got such a huge one, over 30 games to talk about, and at 3 minutes a pop, it's going to take us a while. But folks, you know, right, that you can just click on the links down in the show notes and just skip to any game you want. Plus there's run-throughs in case there's games you want to actually see in action. Links for that down in the show notes as well. But anyway, we've got so much to talk about. Myself and Shea and Kimberly and Ruel, all of us counting down the games that we played over the month from least favorite to most favorite, that I got no time to tell you about our adventures on the road and all of that in the RV. So without any further ado, let's just get right to it. Shea, what do you got?
Hey folks, you want to hear about the games I played? Good, because I got a list of them. Number 6 is Mycology. This is a very lightweight game about going into the woods, the meadows, wherever you find mushrooms, gathering them and studying them. This is a game where you are collecting resources and using those to pick out mushroom cards from a tableau that you are able to that every player is able to grab from, and placing them in different baskets. The baskets are correlating to different seasons, and that is going to determine which ones you are able to grab at any given point, because some mushrooms only really grow during certain seasons. At the beginning of each round, you're going to roll a die to determine what resources everyone gets. It's sort of like a very simplified version of like Machikoro or Space Base, something like that. And while I like that system, and I like that this game is very accessible, I wouldn't have minded if this game had a little bit more going on to satisfy a little bit more of a strategic player. This is a very lightweight game, very easy to get into, and it's got some gorgeous mushroom illustrations. So if you like mushrooms or think they're neat, then it's a cool game for you. But it also, I wouldn't have minded if, the mushrooms that you got affected the resources that you get a little bit more than just getting points. There's also a little bit of ways to sort of snatch mushrooms from other players or trade them with ones that you have in your baskets, or protect yourself from that kind of thing. So there's a little bit of competitiveness in that. But overall, very lightweight game, very easygoing, and pretty easy to get into. Very cool illustrations, like I said. I just wanted a little bit more depth in it personally. That was my only complaint. But my number 5 is Weirdwood Manor. This is a game where is a co-op game where you are all finding yourselves in this large circular manor, and there are tons of different rooms, each with their own abilities. There's the Lady Weirdwood at the center of the castle, the manor, the house that you're in, this big haunted house, and there is a monster, a Fey monster that you're going up against. Now the Fey monster, there's 3 different ones in the core box, and they're very different, very asymmetric in terms of like what they present to you as far as like, with the challenge that you're getting. So there's a lot of replayability between those. Also, the players that, the different characters that you're playing as provide a lot of different abilities. But what is really interesting about this game is two big things. One, the card play, because every time you're taking your turn, you're playing a card that goes into a certain slot on your player board, which corresponds to a different time of day. That time of day corresponds to a ring around the whole board. So you're rotating the ring to get to, the specific time of day matching the card you just played. And that's not just a timer. It is a timer. You rotate that all the way around. That leads you to a new day. New day is timing how much time you have left in the game. It also makes the monster stronger. But it's not just that. It is also a hallway between the different rooms. And sometimes the doors are closed or open depending on where it is oriented. So it's going to determine which rooms you can access. So that is a really fascinating way to keep the game state. It's constantly in motion. Now, because of that, I actually really liked this game at a lower player count. I felt that at higher player counts, it slowed down quite a bit, and I just had a lot more fun playing it at 2-player than I did at 4. So I kind of wish that there was a way to mitigate that a bit for a higher player count. But otherwise, it's a great co-op game. You've got a lot of differences. There's different complexities based on the characters that you're playing, different complexities on the game based on the monster you're facing, as well as you can even play it in a more simplified family mode to make it easier, instead of counting each player's XP, of the 3 XP tracks that each player has, instead of counting those all separately, you all share one big XP track, and you can you do well together, and so you gain all the benefits that you gain as a group. And that's kind of a cool way to do that in a more simplified way. But again, I I just wish this had a wider range of play count for my taste. I think that, other people are going to like this at a higher player count. It gives you a little bit more variety and a little bit more teamwork that you can manage. I actually think 3 players is probably going to be the best play count, but for me, 4 was just a little bit too long. This is the only reason why it's lower on my list. So let's move on to my number 4, which was Marvel Zombies, a Zombicide game, or Marvel Zombicide, as I'm always going to call it. This is a Zombicide game. If you played a Zombicide game, it's similar, but Zombicide games are fun. Zombicide games tend to get a little bit of hate because they're, CMON can kind of go a little bit overboard with their Kickstarters and all that. But Zombicide's just a fun game. It's a dungeon crawling game where you're playing as Marvel zombies. So in the run through that I played, I had Iron Man and Captain Marvel and the Hulk all in their zombified forms. And they're, got a little bit of their personality still intact, but they need to keep their hunger in check. The big thing for this game is that, one, you're playing Marvel heroes, so you're not going to be picking up just items. That wouldn't really be thematic. Instead, you're collecting zombie traits. These are one-time use abilities that provide you with some cool benefits. But the bigger thing, in my opinion, is the hunger track. Everyone has a track of hunger, goes from 0 to 4, and as it increases, you get stronger. But if it gets all the way to the end, then you are ravenous. And so the only things you can do are move and make a very specific type of attack, the Devour attack, which if you use it to kill an enemy, your hunger goes down to 0. So it's a cool game. It's a fun game. It is on the, more straightforward side. I've definitely played a lot more complex, more intricate dungeon crawler kind of games. And sometimes I'll, lean more towards those in my day-to-day, but I really enjoy the straightforward and just engaging narrative that the Zombicide games bring for you. Now, if you've gotten a ton of Zombicide games in the past, you maybe don't need this one, but I think that this is a great entry-level game. People who really like Marvel are probably going to like this one. People who are getting into board games and want something, a bigger experience, this absolutely provides that. It has that great Zombicide power creep of the enemies because they get stronger and stronger, and then all of a sudden you've got hordes of enemies. In this case, they're shield agents, but they're a lot like zombie hordes, and it provides those situations where it seems like, oh man, we are not going to be able to make it, but you're heroes. You're zombie heroes, but you're heroes. And so you're able to do these really powerful attacks. And it is a constantly shifting situation with your hunger level and the cards that you have, but it provides a really engaging experience. So my number 4 was Marvel Zombies. My number 3 was a big game by Ivy Studios. It was really marketing their game very well. I actually played Fractured Sky, which is the game, on 3 different channels. I did a Rahdo run through. I covered it on, I played it with the brothers Murph, and I played it with Becca over at Good Time Society, and I had a blast every time I played it. This is a great game. It's sort of an area control / bluffing game where you have this land of floating islands, and you're sending your airships to different spaces, and when you send an airship, you choose the power level that it has. You have little chips, they're sort of magnetic chips that snap to the bottom of it, and you will get different, you will choose which power level it has before you send it out. The trick is the power level of all 3 airships that you send can only equal 10 or lower. So you can't be like, I'm gonna put my 9, my 8, my 7 on these. No, that doesn't work. So you have to do a little bit of math to do that, but it's always easy to figure out what you need to put out. Well, you're also kind of trying to figure out, okay, how much are they putting over there? Are they putting in their big ship on this space? In which case, do I want to match them? Or maybe I don't care. Maybe I'll put in a weak one because I want to get second place on this anyway. Because all of these locations, yes, you're going to get points for some of them, but not all of them. What all of the locations do give you is resources. And there is a way of determining how much you get based on the order, the ranking of strength in those locations. There's also little buildings you can build, which will give you generate resources or give you extra strength. And so it's a really cool system. It's easy to get into. It's really fun to play. I really enjoyed it. I think they're doing a really good job. I think Ivy Studios in general puts a lot of work into their production value, and it shows. I think they did a really good job with it. So that was Fractured Sky, my number 3. And if that's my number 3, yeah, next 2 got to be pretty good, and they are. My number 2, Monster Hunter World Iceborne. Now, this is a standalone sequel expansion game to the Monster Hunter World board game, which I think is reaching backers about right now or recently, and this is following the Monster Hunter video game. where you are a team of monster hunters and you are choosing your target. So you've got a big monster, you know it's out there, you're gonna go and get it, and you start off by going through a gauntlet of different little challenges, and that's kind of just narratively setting up your fight. So it's gonna put you in potentially a good position, a bad position, or a mixture of this, and once you get into the fight, you are going up against a big monster. The way you do that is you have a hand of cards. And so these cards will determine, what you're able to do. Their movements, their attacks, their little events that might, help you out in some way. And you play them into a little stamina board, which has 5 slots. So you might think, okay, cool, everyone gets to play their cards and the enemy goes. Not quite. Instead, what happens is that you see an enemy card. That's the enemy's intent. And so you know a little bit what's coming. And so at the beginning of the game, the enemy gets to go first, or it draws a card, and it'll do something. And it might attack you right away. It'll attack, based on how close you are, how far away you are. It'll do some movement first. It will attack in an arc, or it'll attack at range, or it'll do something. It'll do an elemental attack versus a physical attack. So a lot of different things that it could be, and you get a little bit of preparation. And then after the attack, it'll say, 2 heroes can go and play 3 cards, or 4 heroes can go, but they can only play 2 cards, or something like that. And then sometimes, if it's a really big attack, it'll have to charge up. And so one unit will be able to go before the enemy gets to attack, and then a couple more players will be able to go afterwards. So it presents this really interesting mechanic of figuring out when best to play your turn. Because after you've gone, you can't go again until everyone else has gone as well. So theoretically, it's possible to go twice in a row if the other 3 players have gone, and then you take the last turn, and then we go sort of clear our exhausted tokens, and then you can go again. But more likely, you're gonna have to wait a little bit before you're able to go again. So you need to balance each player's turns and the abilities that you do. On top of that, the weapons that you're bringing in are going to determine a lot of what you do. A lot of the armor that you're wearing will help you prepare for the opponents, gives you defense, gives you ways to mitigate certain types of attacks, things like that. And those are all things that you are getting and crafting based off of the loot that you're pulling off of the monster. It has a really fun combat system. It's one of the best, boss battle or combat systems that I've played in a while. Really enjoyed it, and I had a really good time playing with that. Now there's gonna be a gameplay video on Steamforged, their YouTube channel. They're gonna put up a gameplay video with myself and Ashton from Shelfside and Jesse from Quackalope, as well as the lead designer himself. But if you want to hear more about the game, especially the campaign mode, I did an interview with the lead designer, and I go into a lot of detail about that. So definitely check that out if you haven't already. But my number one game. This game, oh man, it's good. I got to play it at Dice Tower West, and I liked it so much. I played it once, and then some other people came by and were asking about it, and I decided I'm going to play this again right now. I played it back to back, and I just got to play it again yesterday. I was playing it with the Brothers Murph. I was just over there playing a game with them, so I was playing the game called Earth. In this game, you are Earth. You're the concept of Earth. You're an island or something like that. What you're doing is you're seeding your island with different flora, different bits of mushrooms and trees and shrubs and all kinds of stuff. But what the game is, it is an engine builder. Engine building is one of my favorite genres of games in general. But this game has a really satisfying way of playing it out where you are going to get a handful of cards, and those cards have all kinds of different abilities. And when you play them, you're going to play them into a 4x4 grid that you sort of develop as you're playing it. And that's important because when you activate abilities, which are activated based off of the 4 types of actions that can be played. So, if someone takes the play a card action, it's kind of like Roll for the Galaxy, where they get to do the big version of the action, everyone else gets to do a smaller version of the action. But if you've got cards that correspond to that action type, they are going to get you a bonus as well. But they're going to go from left to right and top to bottom, English reading order, basically. So where you position your cards matters because of, you want to get, to generate resources in the beginning and then have the cards that you spend those resources to get bonuses. And on top of that, this game is just so generous. It is one of those games where you're going to get a lot of points from a lot of different ways. If I had any criticism, the only one would be that the scoring at the end takes a little while because you're scoring for the cards that you've played. You're scoring for the growths on the cards, little seedlings, little cubes that you've placed on the cards, little trees that you've grown. It's like stacking up little wooden tiles. You're scoring for that. You're scoring for all the compost, all these cards that you've thrown away in a special pile. You've got special cards that, Tempest, no, I don't remember what it's called, but like endgame scoring cards that you've put into your tableau. They don't do anything, but they do get you points if you can really manage it. There's endgame scoring objectives that you're going for. There's all kinds of ways that you can score. So there's a lot of different things that you can think about, but you're usually able to focus on a lot of them. It's not like you have to stick on with one thing. You can kind of see where the board is and go for a lot of different things. Maybe not everything, but a lot of different things. And so it presents a really, really fascinating board state. It really feels different pretty much every time that I've played anyway. You can go for a lot of different strategies. The starting cards that you get give you a lot of different avenues to go for, but they don't lock you into any strategy either. And so it is just a really, really good engine building game that I highly recommend. So yeah, that is my number one game this month. It might be a number one game of the year. It's really that good, or at least I think it is. That was my number one game, Earth. But that's it for me. So I will see you folks next time. Bye, folks.
Happy Roundup, everybody. Kimberly here, and it's really great to have Richard back safe and sound after all that RVing. So what my Roundup includes this month is not just April, but also March, and one of my games that I played this last month that I wanted to include on my list. So I'm going to start off with my fourth favorite. It's Vedur, and Vedur was a March run through for me. So this game has deck building and action selection, and the cool thing about it is every player turn is so juicy. You have a main action that you do, but you also have a bonus action, and when it comes your turn again, you have to move that marker, so you can't choose the same main action and the same bonus action. And it just makes the connections or the computations of your actions endless and really cool. And I just felt like I had enough choice on my turn when I wanted to really draft super cool cards and buy them from the public display area, if I wanted to use a super cool bonus that only my character could do. And it just is satisfying. It's really, really satisfying, and there's just the right amount of player interaction. Honestly, there are public goals that you are contributing to, but really you want to be the one to finish those goals in Vedur. Fantastically wonderful Viking-themed game for 2 to 4 players. Moving on to my number 3 is Holotype, and Holotype was a run-through that I did in April, and it's got yet again another lovely theme. It's dinosaurs, and you are paleontologists digging up fossils and bones, going to the library, doing research, and publishing that research that you find on dinosaurs. And they're those holotypes that you find in the deck. And these dinosaurs have all different kinds of characteristics and traits that matter for the global objectives that people are vying to essentially rush out and publish on based on the collective number of icons in everybody's player area. But they also matter for your personal objective, which might be get a bunch of herbivores or get a balance of herbivores and carnivores. But in this, players have these pawns, and they are placing them out into open spaces or bumping other players, or your player, your color, you can bump out too, as long as you follow the hierarchy rules. So this is a worker placement, but workers are of different sizes or heights. And so you've got your paleontologist, then you've got your middle person, which is your grad student, then you've got your assistant, and they're kind of like the lowest. And they also give you different kinds of bonuses or benefits when you go to the locations, and there are 5. So yeah, you're like, oh, I can really send my research assistant out here because I want to send my paleontologist out to do this. So it's really fun. It just moves along at a really nice pace. And it's just a clean game. I found myself really enjoying it and pulling it out even more than I thought I would. So Holotype is my 3rd favorite for this roundup. Moving on to my 2nd favorite, this is Earth. Earth is really kind of stunning everybody right now, and I think there's a lot to like about Earth. That's why it's so high up on my chart. It's super replayable with the massive amount of cards for your habitats and your climates and your ecosystems and your your fauna, and of course with all of the different like earth cards that you get to play from your hand, including event cards. It's so scalable because you can play all the way to 5, and that's a really fun, like just, I mean, all the way around the table. It takes 5, it takes four, intermediate first player until it comes back to you. But you're just playing down your cards in a 4x4 grid in front of you. If someone finishes their grid, that triggers the end of the game. So games are super fast. They last about an hour, maybe 70 minutes, but it goes to 1. There's a solo, and I really enjoyed the solo play. It gave me a chance to kind of do what I wanted to do and not worry about anybody else, because the solo really does run itself quite well, and I found it to be super balanced. Even though I was beaten so many times by the solo. But that's okay. That means that it's challenging and it's really fun. So in this, you've got these bamboo shoots, and you're building up little tree trunks, and you've got sprouts, and you're collecting dirt so that you can buy and invest in more, earth and different kinds of plants and trees and stuff. And so lovely theme. Again, super, super high with theme. I think my 4, 3, and 2 are just like massive on theme, which is interesting because my number 1 maybe doesn't hit theme as hard, but gives me that juicy 2-hour, like medium heavy game that the other 3 don't give me. And I think that's one reason why it rose to the top of my favorites. And the game is Revive. I finally got a chance to play Revive, and it's got a lovely 5-game campaign built into the game that gives you super cool stuff to unlock as you go with more components and elements to the game. But the reason I like this is because it's that 2-hour juicy game, and I love it. I love the exploration that's part of this, because there's a big old board and all these tiles, and you want to flip them over and find stuff, and you want to build houses next to things because they give you resources, because you're coming out from underneath the earth after like terrible devastation, and you're discovering the top land again. You're discovering the area, and you also are playing these cards into these slots, and you can play your cards so that you activate the top part of your card or you activate the bottom part of your card. And there's a wonderful choice that just makes you feel like every turn you're like, oh, what am I gonna do on my turn? And it's got this really nice, just players just go back and forth taking turns. In my case, a 2-player, but you just go around the table and you just keep playing turns until the last artifact is taken, and that's going to trigger the end of the game. And so you just keep playing, and you play 2 actions on your turn, or you just reset and kind of recharge, getting resources, and take all the cards out of your slots so they're free again for your next turn. And so it just has this very easy feel to it. It makes me feel like, oh, my turns are, I do 1 thing, I do 2 things, done. And there are 5 things to pick from, so it's not so complex that you can't get your head around it, but there are a lot of choices in it. And so Revive for me really just rose to the top, and I cannot wait to finish that campaign, unlocking all the really cool things in it. So for me, that was my favorite, and that was just a game that I played just here in my house. But really enjoyed it, and had a really great March and April full of lovely games. So that was it for me, and I'll toss it back to you.
Hi friends, Ruel here to talk about the games I played in the month of April. Now I'm going to kick things off with an honorable mention. This was on my channel. I played a solo game of Ecosfera. This was a Kickstarter preview that I did. It's a really cool nature themed game where you're trying to rewild the world by creating biomes, and you do that through cooperative deck building. Very cool concept, and what you do, you start with the elements, and it's your starting deck, and you're eventually trying to get those elements into fungi and plants, and those plants, when they come up, they're trying to attract animals, and those animals, when you match them all up, they're going to start bringing the biomes. And the object of the game is to get 7 biomes before you get 7 extinct tiles. So, of course, disaster cards come in to play. They clog up your deck. A really cool way to do deck building. It doesn't actually have like currency on it. You're just trading elements and so forth for fungi or plants, and those plants and fungi go into animals, and those come in to bring the biomes. Really cool way to do it. And instead of using currency, you can, there's special abilities that let you grab extra cards into, discard and trash cards. very, very cool game. I'm looking forward to seeing more from Julebert Games. So that's my honorable mention. Let's start with the number 5 on my list. I'm ranking them 5 through 1, and it was Point City. You saw it here, right here on the channel. You also saw it on my channel where I played the solo game. It's the standalone sequel to Point Salad. I love Point City. It took everything I like about Point Salad and just made it meatier. Taking a salad, make it meatier, right? A little more meat on the bones. You have a little more a few more decisions to make, and it's just a little more complex, but not so complex that a new gamer couldn't get it, right? So, new gamers, I still bring Point Salad to, friends that are getting into games or brand new to them or family events, and we always have a good time with it. It's very simple drafting game. Then you're scoring points based on what you've drafted, through set collection. Point City does the same thing, but it adds this really cool element of engine building. It's very much like Splendor, where you're getting cards, and then as you build your buildings, your city, those cards will give you discounts on other cards, and you'll bring them into your little tableau. Oh, it's so good. I really, really enjoy this one. If I had to choose one, I'd probably go with Point City, folks, and that's why it was my number 5 game that I played in April. Okay, number 4, you also saw it here on the channel, Project L with the Finesse expansion. Now, I was excited about this because Boardcubator, the company, had actually gone out of business last year. One of their Kickstarters didn't do as well as they thought it would, so they just decided, you know what, we're just going to fold the company. But thankfully, they've risen from the ashes, thanks to the new reprint of Project L. They put that up, and speaking of rising from the ashes, they have a new expansion called Phoenix. So Project L is one of my all-time favorite tile laying games. It's definitely a top 3 for me. And for years, for a while, I was really hesitant to recommend it because it was out of print. Because this company, it was really hard to get, and then the company folded, and I just figured, well, that's that. Thankfully, this Kickstarter was really successful. They're back. They're printing them, and I believe you can late pledge now. But oh boy, it's tile laying and engine building mashed together with a little bit of Ubongo without the real-time element. So you have these Tetris-style pieces, you have puzzles to, complete, and as you do that, you're going to get more pieces, which, has that engine building element to it. And then the Finesse expansion, this is what I love. It adds another currency, which gives you extra actions and gives you sort of like these in-game goals to work towards. And I thought it was such a cool design to begin with, but then the Finesse expansion just took it up to the next level, and I give it my highest recommendation if you're a tile laying fan. So that's Project L with the Finesse expansion. My number 3 for April was Paperback, the 10th anniversary edition. Again, you saw it right here on the channel. I love word games. You all know I'm a word nerd. I love these games. Scrabble, I do crosswords. I love them all. Paperback is my all-time favorite game. And for the 10th anniversary edition, I mean, first of all, I can't believe it's been 10 years since this game came out. But boy, oh boy, they have really taken the core game and made it better in every way. So you can still play OG Paperback. It's a mash between Dominion and Scrabble. You're building words through deck building. But they've just done everything better in this version. They've added a variant where you can draft, draft rather than just do it on a, fixed tableau. You can draft amongst your fellow opponents. They also added this typos in there, which are, things that sort of, clog up your deck. And then for what you saw here on the channel, what I love is the solo variant. So the original one had a solo variant, the original Paperback. It was a cooperative one, a cooperative mode, which basically you just play by yourself. And what they did here is so good. They took the solo variant and added an AI and a little spatial element to it. So this AI is like the spy. You're playing this like spy novel. So the spy is trying to go around and grab letters from you and, or put influence or pressure on you. And if they put 4 cubes on any one card, you automatically lose. And there's the way that the, AI moves around, and you can, sort of plan your moves. Again, you're building words and trying to get those oh so precious points in order to knock off the spy. I think it's so good, and that's why I love Paperback 10th anniversary edition. Okay, number 2 on the list. You saw it again here on the Rahdo Runs Up channel. You also saw it on my channel where I play the solo game. Let's go to Japan. Now, once I started playing this and getting into it, I was thinking about our fellow contributors here on the channel, Amy and Maggie of Thinker Themer. I thought about theme and mechanism, and I love the blend of it here in this game. It's a tableau builder, and the theme is you're planning a trip to Japan. And through card drafting and my gosh, I love the tableau in this because it really does look like a little like 1 week planner or calendar as you're going to Japan. So you're drafting cards and it's like, hey, I'm going to go to Tokyo on this day. I'm going to go to Kyoto here. I have to take the train here. I'm going to go eat some ramen or sushi. I'm going to go to a museum. Hey, I might see a sumo match. All kinds of stuff. And you're trying to, line these up 3 events per day, and then trying to link them up so you get the most points possible, of course. But what really shines, and it's really neat, Richard had mentioned in his video, at the end of it, when you're doing the end game scoring, you're going along Sunday, you start on Sunday, go through the week, and what you can do is you narrate your trip to Japan. It's so cool. It's like, oh, Sunday, I started in Tokyo, and Michelle and I, we went to go get ramen. And then afterwards, hey, we went to a museum. And the next day, we traveled by train to Kyoto. It's so cool. And you're tracking points at the end of the game, as you're doing this stuff. It's like, oh, I didn't have a train to take from here to here, so I'm losing points. So good. I love the marriage of theme and mechanism in this. So shout out to Josh Wood, the designer. He's done another wonderful tableau builder. I loved his game Santa Monica. I love Let's Go to Japan even more. Okay, so my number 1 game of the month was something I didn't stream, but you saw it here. Shea played it here on the channel. Mosaic, A Story of Civilization. This is a heavier game, but what I really appreciate about Mosaic is that the turns are really snappy and it's very, very intuitive. So, I want to shout out my buddy Daryl for teaching the game. He brought his copy over last week. We just, we played a 2-player game. I really enjoy this. It's a civilization building game. It's got card drafting, area control. It is heavier, but, we played our, it was the first time I was playing it. So 2-player game under 2 hours. And, within the first couple of turns, I was like, okay, yeah, it just flows really well. And, it's going to be a game that, for a civ building game, it's going to be a little faster than normal. So, you think of like, you're through the ages, it's hours and hours upon end. I can see this one just going by really quickly at, a higher player count. So thanks to, my buddy Daryl for teaching me, but really those turns are so good. I mean, you're just, doing one action, trying to draft cards that, you really, so you can influence the different areas for the area majority. You have your standard military, technology, population, and so forth. A really cool balancing act because every turn you're going to want to do something, that I want to do this, but I know my buddy's going to do that. I don't want to leave that card there, so I'm going to take it. But, oh, that leaves that open. The game is full of those modes. It's pretty much from the get-go, from, the first round all the way to the end. I always felt like that. It's just very tense, but not like overly, I'm not destroying my brain, but a really well done design. Oh, that's why it's my number 1 for the month, Mosaic, Story of Civilization. Now, I want to do one bonus game. So we had an honorable mention, had my 5 games. I want to do a bonus game, folks, because of one thing here. I want to thank you all for the well wishes and condolences. My father passed away in April. Very, very sad. My family's getting through it together. We've got a lot of support, and I want to thank you all again for your kind words. It really does mean a lot to me and my family. And as I've gone back to work here, slowly but surely, I had an opportunity to hang out with the Tabletop News crew, and they funded their Kickstarter. They had me out in studio a couple of weeks ago, and we played Mousetrap. Yes, the classic kids game from back in the day. It's silly. Am I going to recommend the game? Probably. No, I'm not going to recommend it unless you have kids or you just want some silliness, because it reminded me when we played the game. I had one of the best times I've had in recent times at the tabletop with this fantastic crew. Michelle Wynn Bradley and Katie Wilson, I want to thank them for having me over, and we got to play games. A game of Mousetrap that was silly, fun, and exactly what I needed. And it served as a reminder, folks. These things are, as serious as we get about games, they're fun and silly as well. So go have some fun, go play some great games, and I'll see you next time. Bye.
Wow, that was a lot. Thank you, Shea and Kimberly and Ruel, for making the time. And also want to throw in a special a shout out to Ruel. Man, my condolences. I know what you're going through. I lost my mom and my brother within the last year, and it's so hard. And I'm so glad to see you're on the mend, partially through the healing power of games, which is awesome. That was a very cool loop you threw me for. I didn't know you were going to have that extra little shout out there at the end for something that looked like a lot of fun. There's links for that down in the show notes, folks. Ruel, I hope you're doing well. If you ever need anything, let me know. Now, we've gotten to the part where I'm going to tell you about all the games Jen and I played, mostly while we were on the road for our final weeks of RVing. I'll be doing it in countdown format, least favorite to most favorite, but before we get to that, I've got one more contributor game that we should really talk about, and I was super duper impressed by Expedition. Amy and Maggie covered this, and I gotta warn you folks, this is gonna be a hard game to get your hands on because it was published in Korea, and that's pretty much the only place it's available right now. So if you are outside of South Korea, you're gonna have to contact the publisher directly and have it mailed to you. But if you love deck builders that totally reinvent the genre, you might want to check it out. You can follow the links down in the show notes to go check out the run through to see if it's worthwhile. I think it is because it is racing and exploring through a jungle using your deck full of expedition members. But what really sets this aside from other deck builders, including Reiner Knizia's Quest for El Dorado, is the way you handle your deck, because you try to squeeze everything you can out of it, because your deck does not automatically, once emptied out, just get reshuffled and you keep drawing from it. Once you run out of cards, that's it. And you have to basically retreat from the jungle, come back to your base camp, reset your deck entirely, and that's also when you can buy new cards. And it sounds like a little change to the core deck builder formula that Dominion has solidified for all of us, but man, this game feels so fresh and interesting and unique and tension filled, and it's got amazing art. And again, you can check out Amy and Maggie's run through to see why it's so special. I really hope this gets picked up for wider distribution. It deserves it. Okay. All contributors are out of the way, so let's move on to Jen's and my games, starting with number 15 on the list, Voices in My Head. Now, I have to admit, I have been super excited to try this game ever since I first heard about it from designer Corey Kniziia, and he always produces really interesting, different, unique, and very sharply considered designs, and that's all very true here. This game is so unusual. The premise is basically there's a guy who is on trial for robbing a bank, and he's totally guilty. He did it. But we don't play as the guy. We don't play as members of the jury. We don't play the prosecution, the judge, or any of that. Actually, one player does play the prosecutor, and all the other players play the voices in Guy's head. Whether you are honesty, or guilt, or showmanship, or whatever it might be, you have your own private, secret objective that you are trying to see happen. Whether you want Guy to be found innocent or guilty, or whether you want certain types of jurors to vote in certain ways, everybody has their own secret goal, and every round the prosecutor player is going to pick a card that represents a scene from a big trial movie. And everybody knows, well, okay, this scene that the prosecutor player, who obviously wants the guy found guilty to be able to win the game, is going to maybe focus on Guy's intuition and his memory or something like that. And nobody knows exactly what's going to happen, but everybody knows those are the important mental elements. And so, in response to revealing that card, or revealing the subject of that card, everybody plays this little, what would you call it? Dexterity game. Let's see if I can find a better picture on Board Game Geek of the dexterity game. Let's see. Come on, is there ever a zoomed in one? Okay, yeah. So basically, on a player's turn, they get to take one of their chips that represents their, their voice in Guy's head, and you get to play a little shoving pog game, pushing your particular agenda to the different region of Guy's brain. There we go. There's a good picture of it. And what you're trying to do is get area control over these different sections. Whether you want to have area control of intuition because you think that's going to be a really important thing right now. And you're also trying to shove everybody else off. And your pogs have different values for area majority. They have special powers when you activate them. And it's just a silly good time. There's a storytelling, comedy element of the trial itself. There's hidden roles where you're trying to figure out, do you want him innocent or guilty? What are you trying to achieve? Are you actually trying to help me without even realizing it? Because we both want the same thing. And then there's this little pushing pogs dexterity game too. So why is it coming in at the bottom of the list? Well, officially, this is a 3-player minimum game, but the developer put out rules for a 2-player variant. And that's what Jen and I tried. And I gotta say, it functioned, but it did not capture, I think, the fun spirit of the game. This is really interesting. This is kind of like a party game, but a party game for gamers. Because if you turn on all the different modules, the special powers and whatnot, there's a lot to keep track of. There's a lot to consider when you're doing this storytelling dexterity game. So you want to have a big group of players, but a big group of players with a sense of humor, a sense of whimsy, and an ability to maintain in their headspace all these different special powers that you can do. So I like this game in theory, but in practice, the 2-player rule set that has been released as an official variant just took away almost all the stuff that makes the game unique and special. The area control became a little bit more straightforward. There is no prosecutor player, so it's just random prosecution scenes that are chosen, and it worked. We found it interesting, but I would not suggest this as a 2-player game. I'm still excited to someday maybe try this at a higher player count, the way it's supposed to be played, but as it is, Voices in My Head comes in at number 15. Then let's move on to number 14, Polynesia. From the diner, Piers Sylvester, and I've really enjoyed a lot of Piers' designs over the years. And I gotta say, this game has such a gorgeous production quality to it. I mean, it is just a great looking game where in the Polynesian Isles, we are tribal leaders trying to get our people to safety because a volcano is gonna blow. And there's a huge archipelago full of islands that have all kinds of things that we want to get our meeples to. Because whoever has the most meeples on a given island controls that island. Whoever is the first to a given island can maybe pick up bonuses if they're on that island. And if you have your meeples on some of the islands, they automatically, at the end of every round, harvest the resources you need to be able to get more meeples actually spread out as everybody's trying to get away from the volcano. Now, what makes this game interesting and unique is the fact that we're trying to basically route build. On a player's turn, one of the things you can do instead of moving meeples around is deploy little ships to connect the different islands and declare, well, to be able to use this ship, you have to pay fish or whatever resource you want it to be. And the interesting thing is, that means from now point on, you can use your ship to move your meeples out, but everybody else can use your ship as well, if they pay you. Now, we've seen stuff like this before, but then there's an extra twist. If you want to use my ship to move your meeples to safety, you have to pay me, and one of my meeples has to be in the area so that my meeples can actually direct your meeples across my ship. And that means you are not only paying me for using my ship, but you're moving my meeples for me. Either I'm happy about that because I want to get my meeples out further, or I'm not happy about that because I had my meeple on that island because I wanted to stay on that island. So there's a lot of really interesting interaction between players in this game. And it's smooth, it's fast. Every time you play, you're getting a different combination of different objective cards that will change the overall flow of the game and what everybody's trying to complete, and it's just a lovely looking game. My only complaint about it is there are a couple of rules to tighten the board up for 2 players, and they work. The most important one is at a higher player count, multiple people can build ships on the same lane, and then I've got to choose whose ship am I going to use, or am I going to build my own ship? But if I build my own ship, I have to pay the people who've already built the ship previous to me. That is gone in the 2-player game. Again, as a way of tightening up the board, right? So that it forces interaction between 2 players. And I appreciate that. It works. It is eventually a tension-filled game. But a big part of the game is gone because in a 2-player game, I end up taking these lanes, you end up taking that lanes, and it's just kind of written in stone. There's a little bit less dynamism than there would be at a higher player count game. So while I think it works well, and I appreciate how smartly it was stripped down for 2, I still found myself wishing, boy, I would love to play this at more players because, it's an area control game. Area control games are generally better with more players vying for control and coming in second and all that kind of stuff. And in a 2-player game, it works. It definitely works, just not quite as compelling as I think it might otherwise be, which is why Polynesia comes in at number 14. Then we move on to number 13, Sumatra. Now, this is a relatively new game. Actually, not. It came out in 2020. So, on the trip, folks, we were catching up on a lot of older games when Jen and I were on the road in our RV, and I had taken Sumatra along to play because I've wanted to play it for quite a while. And from Reiner Knizia, it is a set collection game where we are running expeditions through Sumatra, doing, grabbing little tiles that represent interacting with the locals, exploring villages, climbing volcanoes, gathering the equipment we need to do all this stuff. And as we grab these tiles, we put them in our own journal and we fill up our journal from left to right. And every type of tile has a unique function. This game actually has a fair bit to learn because you have to learn how, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. I think it's like 10 different types of tiles. All have their own little quirks and tweaks. And you can't collect everything. So you've really got to focus on, am I going to work on my equipment? Am I going to work on, seeing the flora and or the fauna? Am I going to try to get to as many villages as possible? What is it that I'm going to do? Because again, you really have to kind of pick and choose what sets you are trying to collect for. But what really makes this game interesting is the way that the draft works. Because at any given time, when we reach a new area, in Sumatra, as we move our little meeples along the map, new tiles come out. The first player to enter an area gets first dibs on those tiles. And when we are both in the same area, you and I, and we're both looking at, here's all the tiles that are available to us to grab, I might say, I really want some of these tiles, or I might say, these tiles aren't particularly good for me at all. You know what? Rather than sticking around and trying to grab some, I'm going to be the first to forge further along the trail on the map. And that means I'll get first dibs on the next collection. And that puts the pressure on you because then on your turn, you have to decide, am I going to stick around and try to hoover up some of these last tiles here? Or am I going to race to catch up because the new stuff that came out is even better than what's available to me? And so it's basically a very nice thematic representation of a constantly variable turn order. Who gets first dibs on the tiles as they come out? Not just because of some arbitrary, the first player marker changed hands, but because players are deciding, do I stay where I am and try to grab these last few tiles that may be useful to me or maybe kind of less useful to me, depending on what set collection I'm trying to do or whatever, or do I rush ahead to get access to the first stuff and leave everybody behind? It's sharp. Both Jen and I enjoyed it. And once again, this is going to be a situation where it works well at 2, but at a higher player count, it's going to be a lot more interesting. A lot more tiles come out because at higher player counts, you have a lot more options. You have a lot more opportunities. And there's a little bit more depth with the whole core game of deciding whether you're going to move forward or stay behind. Because in a 2-player game, once somebody moves forward, the other player pretty much has to move forward very quickly. Whereas at the higher player count game, more players might be staying behind because there's more stuff. You're tempted to fall behind to get more things. That happens less in the 2-player game because there are just fewer tiles available to draft. So, we thought it worked as a 2-player, but this game really, you want to have a higher player count, I think, to get the most out of number 13. Sumatra. Then we go on to number 12, Stellarion. Now, this is the latest game in the Oniverse series from designer Shea Torbe. I believe that's right. Anyway, and like all the Oniverse games, this is a beautiful dreamscape world universe where we are doing, in this game, we are running observatories, stellar observatories, trying to launch missions to the stars. And to do that, we need to set collect. There are 4 different galaxies we're trying to launch missions to. And for each mission we launch, we need to have a ship and we need to plot out the nebulas, the stars, and the planets. And once you have a collection of all 4 of those cards, one of each for a given galaxy, you can launch a mission. And if you launch enough missions, you win. But how do you get those cards? Well, at the center of the table, there are 8 decks, small decks of 8 to 10 cards each. And you know before you start playing what the composition of each deck is. You know this is a deck full of ships. This is for each of the galaxies. This is a deck full of galaxy cards with nebulas and ships and stars and planets. And there's always one card face up on every deck. And what you're trying to do is you're trying to manipulate these decks, massage these 8 decks so that you can make the right combination of cards appear so that you can launch a mission. And again, this is a game all about tracking probabilities. Okay, there's still 4 cards in this deck. I know I haven't seen 2 of the planets, so if I draw this card from this deck, there's a 50-50 chance a planet's going to come up. And I need a planet because each of the 4 things you're trying to collect to launch these missions, independently, you can spend these cards to trigger actions like shuffle up the decks and draw and play Go Fish, or literally dig the right card out of a deck no matter where it is, or take cards from the top of the deck and put them in a storage vault so you can use them whenever you want. So you're constantly in this tough decision space of, do I use these cards that I need to launch the missions to instead manipulate the decks so that other cards that I need can come up so that I can launch the missions? And it's sharp. It's fun. As a solo game, I enjoyed it a lot. Jen and I also played it as a 2-player game. And I've got to say, I've played all the Oniverse games, instead of the second one that's never gotten a reprint. And I would have to say, this is probably the weakest 2-player Oniverse game. Oniverse games are always designed to be solo, first and foremost, and they always work well solo. And again, this was a fun thought, a brain-burning exercise, probability. I'm trying to manipulate 8 decks of cards at once to get what I need out of it, and I liked it as a solo, but when Jen and I play as a 2-player, we're like, this is probably better as a solo, and I've never really felt that way about other Oniverse games. So, as a solo game, I think it's wonderful. Especially, this is another thing about this one. All Oniverse games come with a collection of modules you can turn on to mix things up and add more variety to it. And usually on most of them, you'll want to turn on a couple of them randomly every time you play. For this game, you almost want to turn on 3 or all 4 of them to make the game at its full depth and breadth, because the game, its core game, is a little too simple. So I found it's definitely best to play with all the modules or almost all the modules turned on, and definitely best to play it solo. If I were rating this only as a solo experience, it would be much higher on this month's countdown. But rated as a 2-player game, Stellarion comes in at number 12. Okay, then let's go on to number 11, scorecards. Now, this is from designer Mike Fitzgerald, and that's Mike right there on the screen playing with a friend of his. I do not have a video, and there aren't very many videos of the game up because it's not actually widely available. I don't think it's going to be available direct from the publisher until May. So I'm giving you a bit of a sneak peek. What is this game about? Well, it's basically trying to capture the same lighthearted, fast-playing, family-friendly spirit of an Uno-style game. It even kind of looks sort of Uno-ish with the bright primary colors and all that. But don't be fooled. This game has surprising hidden depths because at the beginning of a round, you have a hand of 5 scorecards. You just draw them blind, and on your turn, you're going to play a card, draw a card, and that's all the rules for the game, because you play a card, do what it says, and then draw another card. And after you play through a few rounds, whoever scored the most points wins. But every single one of these things tells you how to score points off the card. So every turn, what you're really going to do is play a card to score some points and then draw a new one. And the interesting thing is, these cards are all about saying, well, hey, if you've got a straight that starts with a 3, you can get 5 points for everything in the straight. Or if you can get a group of blue cards that are odd numbered, or if you can get a group of 6s of any color, every one of them is going to be worth 5 points. And now you might think, well, all right, well, how's that going to work? Because I'm just playing one card every turn. How am I going to get a group of 6s? It's not just your 6s you played. Once somebody plays a card to the table, everybody around the table has access to that card for their own scoring. And that's what makes the game interesting. You might look at a hand of cards and say, oh, I can't score any points off of this. I don't have anything that would feed it. But I will keep this card in my hand until later in the round because my opponents might play the cards that I need to make this a high score. And in fact, since you play through multiple rounds, any cards you don't play, you carry with you to the next round. So you might carry one particular card that might be a huge scorer until halfway through the game. In round round 3, finally, everything's coming to place. I'll play this thing I've been carrying since the beginning of the game, and boom, I'll score 30 points off of this one card. And that's huge because these cards often you'll play a card, maybe you're only going to get 2 or 3 points or 5 points, or a good card is, 10 or 12 points. But there can be super cards played too. And at the end of every round, it doesn't matter how many points you got. There are, the overall game points are, whoever scored the most total points on their 5 cards gets 1 game point. And whoever played the most valuable single card gets 1 game point. And after 5 rounds, I think, whoever got the most game points wins. And so that means there's a wide variety of strategy. You could be playing garbage cards. These are all crap. I'm not going to get anything out of these cards. Knowing that you're setting yourself up for just that one super card that'll be worth 16 points. And chances are, that will win you the game point for the round, even if you saw everybody else was getting a lot of points. So it's sharp, it's fun, it's easy to teach, it's fast playing, and also, I should say, it comes in a bit lower because while I enjoyed it quite a bit, which is surprising because I don't like abstract games like this at all usually, Jen, she's the one who enjoys these. We found as a 2-player game, it can be a little swingy. There can be swings of luck, but it doesn't matter because it's a 15-minute game. Don't worry about it too terribly much. Now, I would rate it much higher because I actually got to play the game with designer Mike Fitzgerald and some friends, including Ruel, at Dice Tower West convention. And the 4-player game is a team game where Ruel and I were teamed up against Mike and one of his friends. And then you've got this whole extra level of depth and strategy because you can't tell exactly what's in your hand to your teammate, and you have to kind of communicate non-verbally. And the other thing is, at the beginning of a given round, when you're playing the team game, I give you, I think 2 cards out of my hand, you give me 2, so I know almost half of what's in your hand, and you know what I've got, and so we're like, okay, should you play? Well, I don't think you should play yet. You should wait till I can play this other game. And then it really escalates. I loved this game as a team-based card game, and I think it's also really, really sharp at lower player counts, where you're just, playing super fast rounds, super fast turns, draw a card, play a card, draw a card, play a card, draw a card, boom! Huge score in scorecards. So it's going to come in at number 11 because it just didn't quite resonate with my wife as much as I thought it would. But actually, I thought it was actually very impressive, and I hope to get a chance to play it with Jen and Ruel someday as a team game. Number 11, scorecards. Then, let's move on to number 10, Good Dog, Bad Zombie. Now, this is an adorable cooperative game, which is about exactly what you would expect from the title. It's the zombie apocalypse. And in this game, we are not brave warriors fighting the zombies. We're dogs. We are dogs who are doing everything we can to fight off the zombies and save our loyal humans. We're cooperatively moving around on a map of New York City, but it's a map from the point of view of a dog. The worst place in the world is the vet, and the boneyard is what they call the cemetery and stuff like that. There's a really wonderful sense of humor, and you really get to role play the idea of a dog because all of your powers are dog based. You can move, it's a basic move, but you can bark and scare things away. You can herd stuff around, whether it's the humans you're trying to bring to safety or the zombies that you're trying to herd away from the humans and get them to fall off a cliff maybe to get rid of them. And I just cannot stress how incredibly sweet and charming this game is. My wife and I are both dog lovers. My wife is a zombie hater, and yet she really enjoyed this game because you get to role play as these dogs. Each dog has their own unique special power depending on what their breed is. And on your turn, you've got a few basic actions you can do, but really the crux of the gameplay is you've got a handful of special cards that will let you do the more powerful actions, including the most powerful card of all, the Good Doggo card that lets you activate your own dog's special ability. And so on a given turn, you're trying to decide, well, okay, I can move over here, I could bark at this zombie, and move the zombie over into that area. That would clear a path so that on your turn, you could actually lead that human to safety and bring him over to Central Bark. And every time you save a human, you unlock a new special power that we get to use, later in the game. It's simple. This is definitely a gateway level game. Make no mistake about it. And honestly, My wife loved this game. This was like in her top 5 games of the month. I think it's really good, but my wife was super swayed by the incredible charm of being a dog and using all these dog special abilities to be able to save all the humans. I think it's charming too, but from a gameplay perspective, the gameplay is good. It's solid, it's well considered. It has a nice, scalable difficulty level, and I think, honestly, I was really surprised. It's a keeper for us because Jen loved this, and if this were Jen's countdown, she would be putting it much higher. In fact, she did. We just filmed her Jen jog yesterday, which is a video that we do for backers of the show. You can hit that eye in the top right corner of the screen if you want to know more, where Jen ranks all the games we played. She ranked this much higher than I expected her to because the gameplay is good, but oh my gosh, the theme itself and the way it is integrated into the gameplay is just chef's kiss perfection. So it's really on the theme that I highly recommend, and on the gameplay, I kind of recommend. I recommend as opposed to highly recommend. Number 10 on the list, Good Dog, Bad Zombie. Okay, let's move on to the next one. This one is Frontier Enchanted Land. And now this is a fantasy town city building game where there are 2 halves to the gameplay. The first half of the game is a card draft. A very, what would you call it? Seven Wonders, Sushi Go style draft where we've got a hand of cards. I'm going to keep one for myself, hand the rest over to my neighbor. They're going to hand me some stuff. We're going to keep on doing that until we've got our final hand of cards. So we get our final hand of cards, which represent all these different fantasy buildings we can build in our town, or resource generating cards that will give us the resources we need to build. And then we do it again. The first half of this game is 2 back-to-back drafts where you are trying to get the right set of cards that will combine with each other, whether it's castles that want to be filled by nobility, whether it's trying to get a set collection of different alchemist huts or whatever it might be, and you're looking to get the right ones. And of course, you're also trying to get enough cards that will generate the resources to build the other cards. So the first half of the game is 2 round robin closed hand drafts. And then after all that is done, ultimately everybody has a hand, I think, if I recall correctly, of either 12 or 14 cards. And then the second half of the game begins. And in this second half, you have exactly 8 rounds to get all those cards built. And every turn you can put out more resource generating cards. Every turn, depending on what round it is, you'll also generate passively some resources. And you can build as many cards as you can and activate their special abilities. And that's where the game really flowers. And it's so interesting because you want to be able to get the most use. You want to be building stuff on every round of those 8 rounds. But depending on how you built your perfect hand of cards, you might flame out early and be done. Oh, I built all my cards by round 6. And it's like, oh, I've wasted round 7 and 8 because the powers of these cards is so varied. And by the way, I should say the presentation of these cards are wonderful too. They have such a lovely kind of child fantasy storybook look to them. And it's all about perfectly balancing. Some of these things will let you draw more cards in the second half of the game. You're like, oh my gosh, I didn't expect this. This completely changes how I'm going to try and get all these cards played. Both Jen and I were really impressed by this. I figured it was going to be okay, but it turned out it was another keeper for us. I'm pretty sure we want to play it a little bit more. But everything about this game is fast, fluid, and just fantastic. It just works so well. There is so much variety amongst all the cards. And again, I just love the look of these cards. When you're playing with them, but they have just such an interesting collection of a surprising amount of depth. It's a big deck of cards. You're going to get a unique play every single time you go through. And yeah, Jen and I both really enjoyed number 9 on the list, Enchanted. Frontier Enchanted Land. You know what? I'm actually almost thinking about I think I want to bump this up a couple levels. I think this actually should probably be my number 7 of the month instead of my number 9. Just thinking about it more and looking at these cards and remembering, I don't think I was giving enough credit. Folks, it's actually, where is it? I'm doing things out of order. Frontier Enchanted Land was my number 7 of the month, let's just say. Okay, then, now that we've done things out of order, let's talk about my number 9 of the month. Motor City. Hey, you know what? Sometimes, folks, I just get so... Anyway, Motor City is the latest crunchy, heavy combo-laden roll and write from Pinchback and Riddle. You know, previously they gave us Fleet the Dice game and then Three Sisters, and this is like the third game in their trilogy of uber roll and writes, where you actually have 2 sheets of paper and you have so many opportunities for things to combo and collude with each other. And just like those previous 2 games, it's really sharp. It's driven by an excellent dice drafting system that is similar to the first one, Fleet the Dice game, but the dice are multi-use. Every die you take, depending on where they get placed on the draft board, lets you activate one of the core actions of running your auto manufacturing facility, but they also give you bonuses that you need as well. And actually, it's interesting. Unlike most roll and writes that have just you doing simple little fast actions, and every once in a while, boom, you get a big combo. Ever since Gone Shown Clever, that has become kind of de facto standard for roll and write design, roll and write 101. This game's very different because every turn you take, when you take that die, you get a bonus off the board, you get to do the action the die tells you to do, and then you get to use the die as a worker placement action. So each turn you are doing 3 turns worth of actions if you were to think of it in terms of like a standard roll and write. And that means this is not little turn, little turn, little turn, little turn, little turn, little turn, big turn, little turn, big turn. It's like every turn is a big turn, and sometimes there are super turns. And that's a really nice change of pace. I really appreciated it. So why did, oh shoot. It's not been on the screen this whole time. Why did Motor City come in at number 9 this month? Folks, I'm a little out of practice doing these roundups at home. Anyway, why did it come in at number 9? Basically, there's one thing that I found myself missing, especially when I went back and looked at Fleet the Dice game. The game doesn't really have anything along the lines of unique player powers or, secret objectives we're trying to pursue. Every time, the dice themselves give you a lot of variety as to what's going to be available to you, but every time you sit down to play, it's going to be the same basic setup, and that's the one thing that's missing. If every time you played, you had a different player power, or every time you played, you drew 3 and kept 1 objective you were trying to do, so they just gave that extra little zhoosh. That's what I think the one thing this game is missing, because otherwise, it's very, very sharp. I think of the 3 games, my favorite is still Fleet the Dice game, but I am not counting out number 9, Motor City. Then let's move on to number 8 on the list, Dice Colony. Okay, this is another roll and write, certainly much lighter than Motor City, the other one that I had talked about this month, but I liked it better. It's interesting. This is kind of, as we find roll and writes just pushing for bigger and crunchier and heavier and more robust, like your Hadrian's Walls and your Three Sisters and your Motor Cities and all that. It was kind of nice to find a roll and write that is very simple and streamlined and straightforward, and yet is so full of tension and angst. Reading to the heart of rolling. Every round in this terraforming game. This could be Terraforming Mars, the roll and write, quite frankly. Well, in terms of theme anyway, because we're on a planet, we're trying to build colonies, we're trying to bring water, we're trying to mine ore, we're trying to bring vegetation, and we're also trying to spur life on the planet. And the way we do it every round is 3 dice are rolled, and bingo style, everybody gets to pick one of those dice, and if it's a red die, it's ore, mines. If it's a green die, it's vegetation. If it's a blue die, it's water. And so you're going to put on the hex of the map another ore mine or another, you're going to expand a lake or whatever. But here's the thing. The color of the die tells you what you're going to put on the board. The number tells you where you're going to put it. Because there's like a compass. 2 is, if I recall correctly, you have to place the blue to the water in the to the northeast of any of your existing occupied spaces. Whereas if it was a 5, it's the southwest. And so I need this water. But it's a 5, which means I have to put it to the southwest of something, and that means I can't put it at the lake that I'm trying to expand over here. But now I could expand it off this colony that's fairly close, and then maybe get another one, because because I put this 5 over here, if I get another water to put it in between to connect all these lakes, I would need a blue 4 or a blue 1. And so my chances increase exponentially that I can join all these later, because this is a game all about trying to figure out how how are you going to expand? Because every time you play, 3 random cards are chosen that are objectives everybody's chasing after, and you're trying to make bigger and bigger groups of contiguous groups of the same type of stuff, because the bigger a group is when you claim it, the more life you bring on the planet, which is another way that you can fill up spaces and score points. But to make colonies, you need to completely surround a given hex space with a variety of different types of things so that colony is worth more points because it has access to more stuff. And so you've got this really interesting dilemma. I want variety all over the place for the colonies. I want homogeneity or homogeneous choices. I want clumps of the same thing so I can get bigger groups and score points that way. And of course, the dice on top of that will never get you what you want. But if you can unlock energy, then you can manipulate the dice, increase or decrease them or change their colors. Honestly, Jen and I were both very impressed by this game. I think this is probably going to be a keeper for us as well. It's light, it's fast, it has a lot of variety. It really feels different from game to game because of the variable setup you get from the different public goals you're chasing after. And yeah, it's just tension filled from start to finish. Very, very impressive little title. Number 8 of the month. Dice Colony. Okay, now let's jump ahead a little bit because I'm doing things out of order and talk about number 6 for this month. Meadow Downstream. Now, I covered Meadow a few years ago. I think I was one of the first channels to cover it, and I could not stop raving about how amazing it is. And Meadow continues to be amazing. It's absolutely gorgeous. It is a card drafting game where we are trying to grab the right cards to get access to the resources that different things in a meadow would give us so that we can play other cards. But the problem is, when we play these other cards, we cover up our old cards, thereby saying goodbye to the old resources and replacing them with different resources. So the core game is brilliant. This first half of the game is playing these tokens to indicate where you grab cards from a, oh my gosh, come on, show me, give me a picture of what I'm talking about. Okay, all I can get is pictures of the expansion. Of course, because I'm looking at the expansion on Board Game Geek. Is there just a picture of the actual original game? No, there's not. Why is there not? Oh my gosh. Let's see here. There must be one. Just a picture of the whole thing set up, please. Although maybe I can understand why there's maybe not a picture of the whole thing set up, because skipping ahead, playing with this expansion makes the game such a huge table hog. Finally, a picture of the actual original game. Okay, so I'm sorry, maybe you don't even need to do this. You already know what Meadow is, but half of the game of Meadow is grabbing cards from a grid by playing little tiles that are numbered 1 through 4. And if I play a 4 in a given row, that means I take the 4th card from the row. Hey, it's some earthworms that give me access to grubs I need, but it covers up the other terrain I might have needed or whatnot. Or I grab this bug, but now I don't have access to the flowers I need for the other thing. That was the core crux of the game. I spent way too much time talking about that. A Meadow is brilliant. Now, I need to go back to those 50 billion pictures of Meadow downstream. Meadow Downstream adds an entirely additional board to the game that, like I said, makes the game huge. It takes up so much table space now because there was already 16 cards to draft from. Now there are an additional 6 over on this other board that you can use your chips to grab. And in fact, each player gets another chip. So the game gets like 20% longer because every round we're going to take an additional 5th turn every round with this additional new board we're interacting with. And the new cards we're getting from this new board, which are all animals mostly based on aquatic stuff, fish and river environments and stuff like that. And oh my God, as always, the game just looks absolutely stunning, all these new cards. But a lot of these cards let you move your canoe further and further down a river to unlock other bonuses as well. So, in a nutshell, this basically is an expansion that adds a bunch of new cards and a new way to draft and get those cards, a new opportunity to score points, and all of that is awesome. I love all of it. The thing that I was a bit less excited about is the fact that they literally increased the game length by about, give or take, 20%. And I think that pushes, for my taste, the game a little bit longer than it needs to be. My wife did not mind at all. She was completely transfixed by the game from start to finish. But I think with I'm really bummed. hugely bummed that they didn't do a thing where saying, hey, you know what? With the Downstream expansion, you're still only going to play 4 of your tiles every round instead of now playing 5 every round. It's just you have a 5th one you can choose from. So every round there's going to be 1 tile you don't use. Something like that to keep the same length. And yes, increase the depth and breadth and complexity, but not increase the game length. Something like that would have about made this perfect for me, and it probably would have come in at number 2 or number 3 of the list. And again, I cannot stress, the game is still amazing, and there's so many cool new ideas and concepts added. I love this expansion. I just wish it didn't make the game significantly longer to play, which is why Meadow Downstream comes in at number 6. Okay, then let's move on to number 5, the Queen of Hansa, I guess. Which, unfortunately, there are not very many pictures of this game on Board Game Geek, but here's a nice looking one. In a nutshell, this is a game where we are trying to collect cards to get majorities in different colors to score lots of points, and the value of those different colors are changing, increasing or decreasing depending on the actions we do. That's the core structure of what we're trying to do every round. Grab another card and play it to our tableau so we have majorities in the red or the blue or the yellow or whatever. What makes the game interesting is the way we get the cards, because on your turn you have 2 cards in your hand. Say you have a red and a yellow card. That means you're going to play either the red card, adding it to your set collection of red, which will hopefully give you lots of points because you're trying to maintain majority in red, let's say. But it also means you are then going to draft a card from the red section of the board. And it may be that, I want to get this red card played because it's really important to me to maintain red, but there's nothing in the red section of the board that I actually want. And so that's the crux. And oh my gosh, the glare on all these pictures. Anyway, that's the crux of the tough decisions you make every round. You're playing a card to score later, and also draft a different card now that may or may not be useful for you depending on what your long-term plans and strategy is. And that is fantastic. The core loop of this game is fast and fluid, and it just sings. It just goes really, really quick. The game overall is a quick game. What does Board Game Geek say? What is the length of a game for Queen of Hansa? It must be less than an hour, right? Yeah, 30 to 45 minutes, and I would say that's right. And it is a super engaging 30 to 45 minutes every step of the way. Every turn is interesting and compelling because of this core decision of what card am I going to play for future point gain, but at the same time considering other cards I want to draft right now. That does not get old. It's fun from start to finish. And both Jen and I liked it a lot. My only complaint is it is still an area control game, and boy, I wish we were kind of doing something else other than just trying to beat players. And I do think it'd probably be a little bit better at a higher player count, but still, I think this is another keeper for us because it just works. Such a simple, clean, elegant system. It feels like it's a game idea that came out 100 years ago. It's been around since the earliest. It feels like an early Knizia design, quite frankly, and yet it's not. It only came out a few years ago in 2019. It didn't really get much attention, unfortunately. This is from a small Japanese publisher, if I recall correctly, which is a real shame because the gameplay is fantastic, and that's why Queen of Hansa comes in at number 5 on the list. Okay. Then we get on to number 4 on the list, the Paperback 10th Anniversary Edition, plus Typewriter. Yes, folks, for the first time ever in a roundup, I'm doing double duty. I'm putting 2 games together in one entry because as it happens, Ruel did a sponsored preview of Paperback 10th Anniversary Edition for the channel. Link for it is down in the show notes, of course. And this new 10th Anniversary Edition adds so many wonderful, cool new things to one of the greatest deck builders of all time. I mean, this is a deck builder that I think I put on my top 10 must-have. If I could only own 10 games, one of them would be Paperback. I put it on that list because it's just about perfection, because it is Dominion deck building crossed with Scrabble wordplay. And those two taste so great together. It is more than the sum of its parts. So Paperback has always been amazing. The 10th Anniversary Edition comes along and adds, what Ruel demonstrated in his run-through, a brilliant new solo mode, which is so cool. I am hoping before time is up that they modify that so it can become a co-op mode as well, because the solo mode is fantastic. Again, check out Ruel's run through. If you like deck builders or word games, you like solo games, it is worth checking out because this solo mode is worth the price of admission by itself. But that's not all. I'm so excited about the other stuff that happened with Paperback 10th Anniversary Edition. Like, they've added new types of cards. One of them are these very, very cool, what do you call them? Genre cards, where at the beginning of the game you say, hey, I'm going to do the horror genre, right? And that gives you a series of objectives you're trying to complete during gameplay. And every time you do, you mark progress on them. And once you, because you have certain actions you're trying to do. I love bringing objective-based gameplay into Paperback. And then the cool thing is, as you're doing them and you're flipping them over, what you're ultimately making is a full paperback, full-sized page paperback, which is just fun. And that's unfortunate. That's a heavily green screen one. But then also, if you pull it off, you're getting victory points at the end of the game. So you're giving yourself in-game goals also. These genre cards, and the genres are horror and science fiction and time travel and fantasy and romance and literary fiction and westerns. They're all so cool. So just adding this big, huge deck of genre cards really ramps up the game to a level it's never been before. But that's not all. I can't show them, but they are also introducing this concept of unlockable cards where, if I were to flip these, they'd literally be spoilers, so I'm not going to show them. If you want to know what they are, ask down in the comments. Ask in the comments and I'll kind of do a spoiler for what the unlockable cards are. But basically the game comes with a series of achievements you want to do over multiple games to unlock more and more and more of these. And let me just say, these are game changers too that really enhance the feel. But that wasn't all. I'm trying to remember. There are so many elements. More typo cards, which are from the abridged expansion. The genre cards are a big deal. Oh, it's a little thing, but this is, to me, very important. The original Paperback, everybody starts with the exact same deck of cards, but no more. Now, everybody still starts with those same basic consonants, the RSLs and all that, but one of your basic consonants has a special power on it. So everybody has a letter they like more than everybody else because it helps speed them up. And instead of getting a bunch of wilds, you still get wilds, but then you also get a tougher consonant that gives you extra bonus if you can make super words. So what this means is this changes the starting hand, and everybody has a unique deck. That is awesome as well. So, as a longtime huge fan of Paperback, this 10th anniversary, and if all that weren't enough, they've got a whole slate of some of the best artists working in board games to give us a whole bunch of new art as well. Vincent Dutray art and all kinds of art. The original art was amazing, but now there's even more cool art if you get the Super Deluxe 10th Anniversary Edition. So, I'm excited about all of this. And that's what brings in at number 4. But then there's one other thing I need to point out. On this crowdfunding campaign, which is only running for a couple more days, there's an additional little celebratory game called Typewriter that is available to get as well. This is another word game, and it's kind of like, what if you crossed Scrabble with bananagrams? Because basically the whole game is just a bag full of chips that you could just bust out and play at a pub anywhere you want if you want to have the ultimate in portable analog word games, not Word with Friends digital stuff, but real physical things where you're trying to do wordplay. And it's a really sharp little game as well. There's on the Kickstarter page, Tim Fowers does a full preview of it, but actually I think these little animated GIFs do a good job. On your turn in Typewriter, you've got a handful of chips that represent different keys on a typewriter. You're trying to make a word, and if you do make a word, every chip that was in that word either has the chance to be scored, so you turn it into points, or if you don't score it or you can't score it, you flip them over so that they end up becoming something else. An S becomes a wild card, or an N flips over to become a cool special power. Because that's the other thing. On the back, back of a bunch of these tiles are cool special powers. And so over the course of 10 rounds, every round you're also going to get another chip. So sometimes you're storing your chips away to turn them into points, which means maybe you're throwing away special powers or whatnot, or making it harder. Because if you get rid of your S, which is the easiest letter in the universe to use, but you turn it into points, hey, you need those points, but you need that S. Are you going to get rid of it, or you're going to get rid of something else? But the other thing is, when you're trying to figure out what word you're going to make, you're also thinking about what are on the other sides of these chips. Because if I put this into this chip, it will flip and become a special power or whatever it might be, and I want that special power. So I am bending over backwards trying to make a word that will use that in so that I can flip it so I can get that special power and use it next turn to do double scores or to draw extra tiles or to change the offer, all kinds of different special powers. And this is neat. This is fun. I mean, again, I think the real strength of Typewriter is it is the ultimate in analog portable word games. Just easy to set up, easy to play, fast, with still some of the tricks of Paperback, like trying to, you get to unlock super powerful vowel cards by making really long words and all of that. So if you like word games and you like fast, fun games that you can carry with you anywhere, you might also want to check out Typewriter, which is also available as part of the Paperback 10th anniversary crowdfunding campaign, which, as I mentioned, just ends in a couple of days from the time I am recording this right now. So you don't have much time left, folks, to check out the best version of Paperback ever, and also Typewriter. Okay, so that was number 4 on the list. Let's move on to number 3. Raising Robots. Now, I should say this was a sponsored preview that I did for the publisher. Its Kickstarter campaign, I think, is going to be launching in May, earlier mid-May. And what is this game? This is a game where we are young child inventors trying to make a series of awesome, adorable looking robots. The coolest looking robot art you have ever seen, quite frankly. Although I have to say about the art, do not be fooled. This game looks at first glance like a, for kids game, or, a family gateway style game. It is not. It is from the designers of Stockpile, which was a very rich and deep stock market simulation. And while this game looks, almost juvenile and childish with this awesome robot art and kid art and all that, it's actually an incredibly crunchy triple engine builder game. And if I had to summarize this game, if I had to give it an elevator pitch, I'd probably call it Wingspan meets Race for the Galaxy. Because, like Wingspan, you are working on 3 separate parallel engines, building robots that can do all kinds of stuff, and then trying to run those engines, and ideally trying to make engines where, hey, the stuff that this engine produces will help me in this other engine later on. That's fantastic in Wingspan. It's fantastic here. But then I say it also has shades of Race for the Galaxy, or heck, Earth, the more recent one that was talked about earlier in this video. Because every round, every player has a hand of the 5 actions we can do. We can upgrade our robots, we can build robots, and we can run our design robots, our fabrication robots, and our recycle robots, right? Those are our 3 engines. So every turn, I'm going to pick 2 of those 5 actions to do. And I am going to assign them to randomly drawn energy cards. And the thing is, everybody knows I've got a bunch of recycle robots. Everybody knows I'm probably going to run recycle. And here's the deal. If the energy card that I assign my recycle action to overproduces energy, because some do and some don't, that means I put energy into the common pool that means everybody, not just me, but everybody gets to do a recycle run. But I might put that recycle on my other energy card that doesn't overproduce, which means only I will do it. So unlike a lot of these games where, oh yeah, you love recycling, I bet you're going to do it every turn, aren't you? Yeah, you can still have that, but you have to wonder, which form of energy am I going to pump into my recycle? Will you get to piggyback off me or not? And that adds this whole extra level of depth and complexity in mind games, trying to figure out what is it that your opponents value so that you can make the right moves to piggyback off of them and get extra actions that you didn't have to pay for. It's great. It's beautiful, with, again, the really cute, bright, colorful, cartoony art, and it is crunchy. Do not judge this book by its cover, folks. My run-through for it will be coming soon in time for the launch of the Kickstarter campaign, and I highly recommend checking out because it is my number 3 of the month, Raising Robots. But then we move on to number 2, Your Best Life. Now, this is a, I want to say roll and write, but I guess you call them flip and fills, because instead of rolling dice, you flip cards. And this is a game where the subject matter is trying to live your best life. You have life goals of things you want to do that bring you joy. You have, all different kinds of things. You could try to pursue career. You could try to pursue relationships. You could pursue money. You could pursue love online, because social media likes are a thing that are kind of like a wild bonus. Or actually, luck is a wild bonus, but likes on social media can give you stuff. And it is a game where we play through, I want to say it was 8 rounds. Or maybe, it was 10 rounds, which I guess each round represents like half a decade or something like that of your life, as you're trying to chase after your long life term goals while still just trying to be healthy and happy, and in a lot of ways interacting with other players. Because, there are some actions like vacations that are so expensive that it's hard for you to do it by yourself, even though they can be a huge, valuable influx of resources and knowledge and experiences. But if I look around and say, this round, the card I chose, because there's 4 cards that give you a different collection of attributes so I could choose the card that will give me a like on social media and some knowledge, but it will also stress me out, which means I have to roll a stress die and it might fill my stress meter up. Or there could be this really chill, laid back one that actually relaxes me, but only gives me 1 social. I go out and hang out with friends and I relax, so my stress meter goes down, but that's all I needed. I just needed my stress meter down, and I needed the the social, because that let me get married, right? And, it let me cross the progress line on my social meter that gave me some money. And now all of a sudden, in addition to everything else, I'm starting to do a combo chain. I've got money. And I might look over and say, I see you chose a card that gave you money. Hey, do you want to join up? And I'll spend half and you can spend half, and we can go on a vacation together, and we can split the rewards of that vacation. So this game has it's interesting too, because you could play it as a single. You're a single person throughout your entire life, or you can play it as a couple, where I've got my character board, you've got your character board, and we have a communal family board where we're both working and we both have to get our final score up to score at the end of the game as a couple. This is an interesting game. You could play this as a 6-player game. 2 players are a couple and the other 4 players are all singles, and yet it all works out in the final scoring to see who wins. And yeah, I love it. I love this subject matter. I love roll and writes. I love big, crunchy, chunky, combo-laden roll and writes, which is what this is, definitely. Much like... what was I talking about? Earlier I was talking about, Fleet the Dice game or Gone Shown Clever. This game has all of that kind of combo chain setup and payoff going on, but it has probably my favorite setting for any roll and write or flip and write ever. It's my number 2 of the month, and my wife loved it as well. Man, we both love this game so much. Your Best Life. Coming soon. And finally, to stores. Not covering it necessarily, although actually the voters might choose it. We'll see what happens. But I've got one more to talk about. My number 1 of the month has to be an expansion for one of the greatest co-op games of all time, The Loop. And the expansion is the Fur Brigade. The Fur Brigade. And unfortunately, there are almost no pictures of this on Board Game Geek. I think the best we can get is a picture of the back of the box, right? Although that is German. Let's go on ahead to the English back of the box, shall we? There we go. So, what do you get with the Loop Fur Brigade? You get 2 new playable characters. They are the Fur Brigade. There is Katruman the Black and Arsene Lupus. It's a dog and a cat you get to play as, although the dog is really more of a Victorian-era werewolf type. They come with their own deck of unique cards. So, just like the other expansions in the base game, every player has really cool, unique special powers that make them feel so different in this cooperative battle to stop Dr. Fu from destroying the space-time continuum, like always. But the Loop Fur Brigade adds these playable characters and adds a couple of new concepts. I forget what they're called. They're kind of like super black holes. one time and then they're gone abilities. But then there are other abilities that let you create these new tokens. In addition to the warp tokens that are appearing all over the place that we have to get rid of, the energy tokens that appear all over the place that we can use to power our efforts to stop Dr. Fu, there's now these black tokens. And these are effectively teleporters. You can consume a teleporter to teleport to where the black token is. So in a game that is so much about trying to be in the right place at the right time, you have more powerful tools than ever before to get to the right place at the right time with all these cool new abilities. And, and the two new characters, of course, well, the werewolf one definitely is, encouraging you to do black holes specifically to create more of these black cubes so you can teleport around more quickly. The cat, their main thing is they have a bigger hand of cards than ever before, so they can just have really much more powerful turns in general. And the loop is fantastic. These two new playable characters and a big bunch of new cards. No new game modes or anything like that, unfortunately. But still, I'm just happy to have more content for one of the greatest co-op games of all time, The Loop, which is why The Loop for Brigade comes in at number 1 this month. Phew! Oh, I can't believe we made it, folks. I can't believe you're still here, which means you must be a super fan, just like all of these folks, the ones zipping by. These are everyone who actually supports the channel on Patreon or here as YouTube members. Thank you, every single one of you. But I also want to do a special thank you to the high-level backers. So let's get to it. First of all, KB, Kisa Griffin, Heather Udarian, Mike Bloom, Adrian Dong, Chris Steele, Eric Z, Victory BHG, Dan Halligan, Jeff Young, Hans-Peter Bach, Caitlin Albert, Steve Ercolini. You are all my best friends now. Thank you very much for helping keeping Rahdo running. But anyway, let's move on to Kevin Bertram, Graham Wallace, Asis Samleonis, Blake Wilson, Mom Gamer, Amy Adams, Jerry Reese, Dave Salvatore, Jeff Glazen, Sharon Laubach, and Stacy Lee. You have all achieved alpha level superstar status. You're my favorites now. Forget about all those other ones. Oh, thank you. And yes, and thanks to everybody else. But finally, Lex, Davey Davis, Charles Hill, Jay Huber, Marilyn, Cheryl Howard, Demnois, 2030 CE, Selma Lee, Jimmy Schroeder Hansen, Nicholas Elkins, Cobra Misfit, Chris Arnold, Cameron Zafar, Dennis Inti, Marlon Cruz, and Dr. Fu. We need to work out some kind of secret handshake, or something, because you're the best. Thank you all for supporting the show. And thanks to the rest of everyone else. Folks, hopefully you enjoyed it. We'll be back again next month. Let me know what you think about all these games down in the comment. And otherwise, have a very, very nice day. Talk to you later. So long, bye-bye. And hey, why don't you click on something? Click, 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 clickety-click.